back in the day, to own a sports car, you had to be kind of quirky, you know?
Right.
You're like my dad would say, he's one of those sports car nuts, you know?
Right.
Because it wasn't good for anything else. You couldn't use that in winter, and you couldn't park it. It was so easy to steal, you know? You could jump a couple. So consequently, they were like toys. This was a sports car you could use as a car. Welcome to that episode of Jay Leno's Garage. You know, whenever we have some high-end Ferrari here, I always say it's automotive royalty. Well, this is Japanese automotive royalty. This is probably the most important sports car, I think, in Japanese history. Certainly the Toyota GT was impressive and it's a great car, but it wasn't mass marketed. You know, people didn't have access to it. They didn't produce that many of them, and they were very expensive. This was a car built for the American market. They studied us. They saw what we liked. You know, when this came out, this is the Fairlady Z, later become the 240Z. It had roll-up windows, it had a 5-speed, it had a 6-cylinder, which all seems like, yeah, so what now? But back in the day, when you bought a British sports car, you still had the sliding plastic windows and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of Corvette, XKE a little bit, but obviously less expensive than those. And it really took America by storm. People just went crazy for these. They were strong, they were fast, they were durable. And it was a good-looking car. It wasn't some tiny, cramped little thing you had to squeeze into like my Honda 600. But this is owned by the ultimate enthusiast. He's had this car for a long time. Jay Ataka. Jay, come on in. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for saving this piece of history.
Thank you for having me here.
I love cars that have a national origin. Ferrari is Italian, Mercedes-Benz is German. You know, everything now is kind of homogenized. Nissan, Fiat, they all share everything. But this is still the era when there was a Japanese way of doing things, there was a German way, there was an Italian way. Like when you look at an American car from the 60s, if you know nothing about cars, you go, oh, it's got to be an American car. It's big, it's flashy, you know, whatever it is. And this is a car, I think, that all Japanese enthusiasts could be real proud of. Because in the early days of Japanese cars coming to America, they weren't particularly durable. You know, they had smaller engines and they were high revving. They weren't used to our super highways where people drive 75 miles an hour. So a lot of times they didn't hold up. So this was built for a specific purpose and it did it very well. How long have you had this car?
Well, we acquired this vehicle back in 2015. We got it from a person in Colorado.
Right.
And since it was kind of like a project, we didn't touch it for like 5 years, and we did a restoration. Took us 2 years. Just got it done last year.
Okay. So now this is a 1971 Fairlady. Okay. When did it officially become the 240?
Well, 2.4 liter engine didn't really come out in Japan until like second year or so.
Right.
But US, everything was 2.4.
Right.
240.
So 71 was the first year in America for the 240. Is that correct, or is it 70?
Well, it's spring of '70.
Okay.
There were about 543 69 production 240Zs, but they were imported and sold at a dealership in the spring of '70.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, well, notice the difference. You see, you got the covered headlights, and these are my favorite. I love these mirrors. I think they are so cool. You know, when I got my Miura, Lamborghini Miura, it had these on them. I just love those. I mean, it's impossible to adjust the mirror, obviously, when you're driving. But I just think they look so cool, and that's a uniquely Japanese trait. Was it drum brakes in the front or discs?
Discs.
Discs, okay, but drums in the back.
Correct.
Right. I noticed it's a 4-lug wheel rather than a 5-lug wheel. The 5-lug wheel came later. But to me, this is the purest design. When the 260, the 280, then the 300Z, they got a little more American. You know, this to me, it's like the first generation Mustang. The first incarnation is usually the prettiest to me, you know. It's the most efficient. And this is still a great looking car. I mean, when you look at the new one that just came out, it has all the styling cues from this, you know. So it's really a fascinating car. Of course, this one is right-hand drive. And in Japan, they had names like Fairlady, there was the Lilac, and there was a man named Mr. K, who you met as well. Mr. K He came to my garage. It was such an honor. He was a Japanese gentleman who really understood American culture, because back then, Japanese, what? You know, my favorite thing is when people from Asia or Europe come to America and they order a soft drink and they get this thing like 44 ounces, you could bathe in it, and they're like, oh my God, why are portions so big in America? You know, so they really didn't understand it, and Mr. K convinced the Japanese manufacturers, Americans like Z, they like X, they like harsh names, you know, like names that sound, a lilac sounded too feminine. A man wouldn't buy a car called a lilac or a Fairlady, you know. And he was correct, and he was really the marketing push behind making this car the success that it was. And you got to meet him too, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, he was a real gentleman. He lived to be 105. He came to this garage when he was 100. And really just a fascinating gentleman. So tell us how this Japanese-only model differed from the American version.
Okay, first off, if you look from outside, obviously you can see the mirrors.
Right.
But you're gonna see the front turn lights in orange.
Right.
But there's nothing in the quarter panels.
Right.
And all the emblems are different. Even the hood emblem does not say Datsun.
Right.
And also, this is the base model that comes with no hubcaps,
Right.
no rubbers on the bumper.
Oh.
So you notice you don't have any overrider here,
Right.
and don't have a rubber here. This particular vehicle was the base model.
Well, let me ask something about, you said there's no Datsun emblem. Now, this is a story I always heard, and maybe you can confirm it or deny it, that when they first sent the cars to America, they were afraid that they might not be successful, and they did not want to embarrass or shame or lose face with the Nissan name, so they called it Datsun.
Right.
And so they said, if Datsun doesn't work, then we dissolve the brand, and then that's it. But it became very successful. In fact, so successful in America, Datsun was sort of bigger than Nissan. So they dropped the Datsun name and then went back to calling it Nissan. Is that correct?
Correct, back in 1983. So some cars had Datsun by Nissan emblem on the back.
Right.
Looked kind of
but Datsun was just one of those names they think, well, you know, we'll change our name in case nobody likes it. You know, it just made me laugh. It was very funny. Okay, so that's a story I always heard, and it turned out to be true. Okay, I guess they studied all the American cars, didn't they? Or at least the cars sold in America.
Yes.
Because you see some Thunderbird, you see some Jaguar, you see sort of Corvette. It was what at least in the American model, 150 horsepower. Is that what it was?
US 240Z.
Yeah.
Had 130 at the beginning.
130, okay.
And then went down to 125 in 71 and a half.
Because of emissions.
Probably so.
Right, yeah. But still, that was pretty good. I mean, MGs, Triumphs were like 110, 95, something like that. And they were strangled by emissions. So the Japanese made a better effort at it. But it's hard to convey what a huge success this car was when it came out. People were just awestruck by it. It seemed like such a bargain. I mean, it was a real grown-ups, but it had a heater, it had a defroster, you know, all the things that really didn't work on a lot of the English cars, because, you know, you see people freezing and you got to put the top up by hand, whereas this was a very sophisticated car. It seems so simple now, but it really was. Can we open the hood? Let's take a look at
Sure.
And what size engine is this one?
This one is 2000 cc.
Oh, okay, so this is a 2-liter.
Yes. Let me see.
All right, go ahead.
You know how to open this?
Yeah, go. So basically the same block.
Well, block itself is L20, we call it A. So this one came with a smaller diameter cylinder wall, and it had a smaller SU carburetors.
Right.
So you can kind of tell I mean, if you are enthusiast, you can kind of tell it's a little bit smaller.
Right.
So even air cleaner box, they're not interchangeable. So if you bring a 240 ones, they don't even fit here.
Won't fit, yeah.
No.
So was this what we used to call a gray market car? Was this a car, this was not available in America yet, and this was brought over from Japan? Is that what this was at the time?
Yeah, this was probably brought in 80s, late 80s.
Okay. But I mean, back in the day, if you were a GI and you were stationed in Japan,
yes,
you could have bought one and then imported it to America before it was officially here.
Correct. A lot of people, as a matter of fact, did that because this thing was back ordered for like a year.
Yeah. Like I have a Mazda Cosmo.
Yes.
And that was owned by, and it had this insignia on it of a jet plane, and he was one of the, whatever that high-flying spy plane, U-2 pilot, and he had the insignia on the car. And that's how I tracked him down. I found him in Florida. He was like 88 years old when I found him. And I said, I'm the guy that bought your car. He thought I was some crazy guy calling me. I go, no, don't hang up. I bought your car. What? How did you know I had a Mazda? No, I bought it. Oh, okay. And then we had a nice talk. And that's what he did. It was not legal. Well, it was legal because in those days you could bring almost anything in. It just wasn't sold in America. It was right-hand drive, Wankel engine, which nobody had ever heard of. So they had a hard time selling them here, but that's how I got mine. Did all of the ones in Japan then go to 240 when America did, or did they stay 2-liter?
So they had an optional 240Z and 240ZL with a little more options.
Okay.
And then they had a Z432 with twin cam, 2.0, but triple carburetors. Z432.
I've never seen one of those.
Oh, same engine you probably featured a few years back, the GTR.
Well, you've done a beautiful job restoring this.
Thank you so much. So you kind of see the throttle linkage is stretched all the way to get there. And if you look at a left-hand drive 240Z, everything comes natural.
Right.
See, all this vacuum hose is extended all the way here.
Yeah.
This whole thing was designed for U.S. market.
Right.
Through 69 to 78, they produced 540,000 some cars.
Wow.
And early 240s, they brought about 164,000, and 90% of them came to U.S.
And this was a huge success right from the get-go, wasn't it?
Yes.
There was no, hey, wait a minute, we're not sure what this is. I mean, but Paul Newman raced them. I mean, yeah, they really, and I think they sold for about $3,500.
Yes. Without a premium.
Yeah, yeah, and Corvettes at that time were closer to 5,000. So this is about the same price as a Mustang, a 6-cylinder Mustang, but obviously you got a real sports car here. Cool. What else do we have here?
Let's see. As far as exterior, Fairlady Z came with the
locking gas cap.
Yep.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Comes out like this. And then US model never came with this. So some people, collector guys know all
Was
about
that a
this,
big problem in Japan, people stealing gas because it's so expensive?
Probably so.
Well, I mean, I just wonder why Japan would have it, not America,
It should be vice versa, right?
And in Japan, in the day, this was a high-end expensive car, correct, or no? Or was it still pretty reasonably priced? I mean, in the American market, it seemed reasonably priced. In the Japanese market, where people are driving the little K cars, not Chrysler K cars, the small 600 cc's, this seemed like a Cadillac or Ferrari or something. It just seemed so powerful.
Well, it was affordable. Z432 was almost 30–40% more expensive.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was pretty, high price. But more than a price, most people couldn't afford second vehicle like here.
Right.
They have a space issue and all that.
Yeah.
So
now in Japan, you have to prove you have a place to park it before they sell it to you, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Because when I went to Japan, I was amazed. I could ride through neighborhoods and I'd see a car on top of the house. Like they would have a lift and it would go, and the car would be stored on the roof of the house. And it was like, oh, that's weird.
It's only getting worse. I was in Japan a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I saw this car thingy going up and down, all the way down like 100 feet down the bottom of the ground.
Wow, okay.
So you have to put your numbers in order to retrieve your car out of the ground.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Well, let's close this hood again here. There we go. And of course, you had the hatch, which made it really practical.
So, so it has a Fairlady Z emblem here. Of course, it has a Nissan emblem
Right,
here.
Nissan, right.
Yeah, you don't see any Datsun name on there. Oh, by the way, the name Datsun was not like a Datsun dog. It's
No,
the,
is it the Sun?
no, another automotive company Nissan bought out years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were named after 3 different guys' last name.
Oh, okay.
D-A-T.
Oh, somebody, initial somebody.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people think it's a dog, but it's...
No, I never thought that's a Datsun. Yeah, that's different. But it was really a practical car. I mean, you had a full-size trunk. You could carry stuff in it. I remember my college roommate's brother had one, and we were so jealous. Oh, it was unbelievable, you know. I mean, when he pulled in, people would gather around and look at it, you know. I mean, it was, because there really wasn't much in '71. That was in the American market. Emissions were coming in, and cars were, it was the first year horsepower was less than the year before, you know. Even Cadillac had that big 500 cubic inch motor, and it was like 180 horse. It was like crazy how strangled they were. But very nice. But also there were so many options for these. You could get the custom exhaust systems and all the cool stuff. Very nice, very nice. Well, can we take it for a spin?
Sure.
Let's drive it. Yeah. Well, you know, people forget when this car came out, there were still cars from the 1940s on the road.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? So cars, so to see something this low and sleek, you know, compared to the big high cars, and a lot of cars from the 50s, this came out, cars from the 50s were only 20 years old, you know?
You're right.
And there were plenty of them around, so it really seemed like something, you know.
That is so true.
Yeah, it's funny when you watch the old vintage footage, you see the other cars going by it, they're just enormous. You know?
Right. So Nissan back then bought a Porsche 911 to do an extensive test, because that's what they targeted this vehicle.
Right.
To sell it for half a price and still being able to beat Porsche
Right.
in every way. So it's kind of amazing how they did that, and they sold that many cars. This is like the most sold sport car in the automotive industry, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, I guess the one that beat it for this reason was the Miata.
Oh, okay.
The Miata is now probably the most successful sports car in the world. But this is certainly the first really mass-marketed sports car.
Right.
Because when you know, back in the day, to own a sports car, you had to be kind of quirky, you know?
Right.
You know, like my dad would say, he's one of those sports car nuts, you know?
Right.
Because it wasn't good for anything else, you know? A little TR3 with the low-cut doors, you couldn't use that in winter, and you couldn't park it. It was so easy to steal, you know? You could jump a couple. So consequently, they were like toys. Like this was a sports car you could use as a car.
So that's another reason they did not put Z432 in the US, because triple carburetors are pain in butt to adjust.
Right.
SU carburetor made by Hitachi was a lot better, reliable.
And it's funny because Americans didn't like cars that rev. You know, the Honda, even the Honda S2000, when the new one came out,
right,
it revved to 9,000. But to Americans, oh well, you're damaging the engine. You know, they don't. You know, we're so used to low-end torque, where you just put it in gear and touch the gas, and like the hand of God, the torque pushes you away. You know?
Right.
But so the idea is someone, like when I take I've got that 64 Honda S600, the red line's 9,400 RPM.
Like a motorcycle engine.
Yeah, and when I'm going 9,000 RPM, people are like, whoa, you're not hurting it. That's what it's supposed to do. Is there a big 240 club in Japan?
Yes, they do. Well, they have a bunch of Z clubs, and I am a member of a few. It's everywhere in the world.
And how many Toyota GTs did they make? They didn't make enough of those to...
Just a few hundred.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was a great car, but much smaller than this.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not really a realistic car to drive, like you mentioned.
Because I drove the one When Sean Connery did that movie, the Bond movie where they shot it in Japan, they had to cut the roof off it to get him in.
Right.
You know,
They made a few, right?
So they pulled it out of the factory, and I got to drive that, and it was kind of fun. But you realize it feels almost toy-like. You know, this feels like a car because the dimensions. You know.
So when Yamaha brought the idea of building 2000 GT to Nissan, Nissan didn't want to do it, and then Toyota took it.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at the head of 2000 GT, it says Yamaha on it.
Yeah, yeah. Do you guys manufacture those mirrors too?
So what we do is we manufacture our own things, but we never make copies of somebody else's reproduction.
Right, right.
And we communicate with at least 50 suppliers in Japan, making sure we're not making the same thing.
Right, right.
Because we're not going to have any more of these cars produced. So we share that already reproduced parts, or if we hear about the new upcoming reproduction parts, we hop in financially or marketingly. I mean, we just sell their product for them.
And this one is what, 130 horsepower?
Yes, so this one is 71, so it comes with the second type of head, so 125 on the
But it weighs what, 2,200 pounds?
Yes, 2,200, yes.
So that's almost like adding horsepower in this sense.
Right, yes.
A modern version's car would weigh 1,000 pounds more.
Exactly.
You would need at least 300 horsepower.
Yes.
Or at least 250 to do what this does. So
it drives fun.
Oh, it drives very nice. Do a lot of people convert to the four-wheel discs, or they just keep the drums in the back?
Well, when it comes to Z's, there are people who are deeply into originality, but on the other hand, there are so many people who swap motor or modify.
Right.
So I would say 30% people convert the back end to disc. But you really, you really don't need the disc brakes.
Yeah, you don't, no.
Yeah, it's lightweight.
Especially in a street car. Yeah.
Right.
So great you make all these small pieces, because these are the visual things that you see while you're driving it, you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, you want it to be,
Yeah, we make a shift boot, the knob, the emblem, and all this.
We just did a piece, there's a place called Just Dashes in Van Nuys. Do you know them?
That's
what, is this one of them?
Yep.
Don't they do an amazing job? I mean, this looks beautiful. This looks like...
I've been dealing with them in the last 20 years now.
Aren't they great? Yeah.
Yes, and their website is linked to our website too. We have a great relationship.
Oh, that's great, yeah. Because, I was just admiring this, thinking, boy, this really looks
It takes some craftsmanship.
Did the 240 ever go to a 5-lug wheel, or was it always 4?
So 5-lug wheels came out on Turbo 280ZX. Turbo came out in '81 with automatic transmission only.
Right.
So I think that's the one they introduced 5-lug nuts. '80s is when they went all turbo.
Now, were those things for the American market, or did the Japanese like those type of things?
Well, I would say the whole Z thing is about American market.
Right.
As a matter of fact, that's what the market wanted. I guess that's what American people wanted.
Yeah.
All the sports cars went luxury, even Porsche. Porsche went to, they tried to go to 928.
Right. Yeah, they didn't build too many of those. Well, those are starting to be more appreciated now.
Right.
It's great because you got a rolling showcase for everything in your car.
So this one has an optional calendar clock. There's a calendar built in there.
Oh, I see.
And also, they had an optional rally clock.
Was that factory back in the day?
Yes, it was optional. And there's another clock called the rally clock with the 2 knobs. It has a stopwatch feature, which was standard on Z432.
You know, Chrysler used to have a clock that fit in the steering wheel, and
Yes.
every time you turned the steering wheel, it would wind the clock.
That's interesting,
It
yes.
was self-winding, yeah.
That's amazing. So I grew up with all these cars. My father was deeply into cars, not as much as you, but he had some 50 cars in his collection.
Oh, really? Wow.
Some of them ended up going to a Toyota museum in Aichi, Japan. But it was all about American cars and European cars, Buick, Cadillac.
Because cars really didn't really start to be introduced in Japan for
Right.
everybody until after the war, correct?
Right.
Not till the 60s.
I myself wasn't into Japanese cars until I came to US in 1990.
Well, the thing that really helped the Japanese manufacturers was during emissions, all the American companies sent lobbyists to Washington. We
Yes.
can't meet these. I mean, no, we're going to lose millions of jobs, union workers. And Honda and Toyota and the Japanese came in and said, what do you want? How many miles per gallon? How many? All right. They went home and they came back with that CVCC engine?
Honda.
Yeah, Honda. Yeah.
They were
and,
the first one to pass the mass key, right?
Yeah, and amazing. And that's really what cemented the relationship. Because it's so funny, at the beginning, they thought Japanese cars were junk. A lot of animosity in the war and all that.
Right.
And then they became better and sort of won over Americans. And now the American manufacturers saw the light. Like everybody at GM, everybody at Ford is an engineer now. It's not marketing guys, they're
Right.
all engineers. And they really make good products.
Around that time is the when they had a oil crisis, so
Right.
they really loved the four-cylinder Honda engine.
Boy, this is cool. Hey, look at that. I want to. My spot was not working. But we're probably going 55, 60 at 1800, 1900 RPM.
Right.
And of course, there are big Z events all over the world, aren't there?
Right. So I'm honored to say that one of my fully restored 240Z holds the record of winning the most trophies
Oh, is that right?
in the history of Z-Con. Z-Con is going on for the last 35 years now.
Is that an American event or a worldwide event or what?
It is an American event, but a lot of international
Right.
participants are in the show. And upcoming show will be in Ontario, California, which is only 40 minutes away from here.
Right, yeah.
And you'll be in August this year, and hosted by Group Z. Group Z is the oldest Z car club in the world, established in 1971.
Wow.
And it'll be a great show to come out. It's a whole week event.
Oh, that's great.
So Mr. K used to come here for the show.
Yeah.
Mr. Matsuo used to come to the show. Yeah, it's the most prestigious car show for Z enthusiasts.
Have you driven the newest version of the Z?
Just in the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
I wish I could. It's like a year or 2 year waiting.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
So they want to ship more new Zs to US, so they don't have anything in Japan, I heard.
Are they building those here or are those all built in Japan?
Built in Japan. So I'm in the exporting business. I ship cars out of Long Beach.
Right.
That's where they've been bringing all the Nissan cars from Japan
Right.
since 60s.
Wow.
So I go there and I see all the new coming cars off the boat, but not that many Zs. They're hurting for production. The whole world is hurting for new car production
Yeah.
right now. But Mr. Tamura, he's the chief project leader for the new Z. His nickname is Mr. GTR. He put
Yeah.
a lot of heart and soul into this new Z project.
Do you know Mr. Nakamura? You know who was the stylist?
Yeah, I've never personally met him, but
Oh, very nice.
he's a legend.
Oh yeah, he's been in my garage many times. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he's one of a legend.
Yeah.
So this car has a coilover suspension
Right.
that I put on, so it's a little bit stiff right. But it looks better this way.
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot of people throw triple carburetors and put a different exhaust and
Yeah.
do all kinds of things, but it drives nice as it is.
I like stock. Stock will ultimately always be worth the most because
I agree.
that's what it built its reputation.
Yeah,
I mean, little minor upgrades maybe a little bit, but
it's a lot of work to make your car look close to original. So this car won the best early Z award at a JCCS in September.
great.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Japanese classic car show. I love that car show. That's probably the best Japanese
Yeah.
car show outside of Japan.
Yeah. You run synthetic oil, or you run, regular oils that they used back in the day?
Yeah, conventional oil. You don't want to put synthetic oil because all the seals and
Yeah,
gaskets are not made for synthetic.
Right. Synthetic's too thin, it leaks out. Huh?
Right. And also, not just the gaskets, but all the metal bearing, the clearance, and all that stuff. Yeah, I usually go by what the manufacturers recommend. I'm an ASU certified auto technician, and I usually go by service manual, not Google searching things.
Well, Jay, thanks for being so knowledgeable and bringing this piece of history for us.
My pleasure.
There's an awful lot of Z enthusiasts out there, and this is one of the seminal cars of the period. It really is just a great piece of history. You know, it's so funny, when this car came out, there was no Japanese heritage. You know, Alfa Romeo had heritage, Ferrari, Bentley, they all raced in the 20s and 30s and whatnot. So they were brand new. So this really was the beginning of Japanese heritage. And now, 50 years later, it's got a real line. You know, you can trace it all the way back, and it's fun to see. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a real honor to get to drive this. Thanks for keeping it so authentic. So you really experienced what people experienced when they got it new. So hope you like this little piece of Japanese history. We'll see you guys